Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
Thank you so much, baby.
Yeah. Thanks for your help, Dal.
Okay, first off, apparently they even have to use gold coffee mugs or hot chocolate mugs. So there's that. And then she makes a joke, I guess, saying thanks for helping me sit down.
Honestly, I feel like it's so crazy when you sit there and in the car was still very dismissive. And then you get on the bike and cameras come out and you act like none of that shit happened. All cheesy. Oh, babe, come here, let's take a picture.
We haven't heard this before, but I could see this being true for a number of reasons. She's saying, I think, that in the car when they're not being filmed, that he's being dismissive, according to her. And then she says, when the cameras are here now, you're all nice. Oh, babe, come here, let's take a picture. If that's true, is it because he's manipulative, which everyone seems to assume? Not everyone. But a good number of people in the audience, from what I understand, even people that filled out my survey, which is, a self-select, is a particular sort of crowd, I think, that will respond to a survey, and a particular sort of crowd that even watches my channel. I suspect most fans that watch the show would never want to watch my reaction videos because, unbeknownst to me, until rather recently, pretty much everything I say is like counter to what the general audience, even when I ask friends who I respect about the show, they will say things that's more akin to what I will see online. And I just find, and so the thing that everyone's saying about, or many people are saying about him, is that he's manipulative. And maybe he is. But I don't see any evidence of that. But I don't see any evidence necessarily that he's not being manipulative. But I'm confused as to why people would think that. Now, maybe it's because of this. Maybe people had seen this scene and I hadn't seen it. Maybe something will happen here. So is it manipulation? Could be. There's different types of manipulation. And I think what people go to is that it's like psychopathic manipulation, like lack of empathy sort of manipulation. There's other manipulation of like, he wakes up in the morning and he's just like, oh, I don't know what's going on with this engagement. We had a thing 2 weeks ago that was really beautiful because, the span of time that their post-getaway is 3 weeks. And I think they're like 4 or 5 days from the wedding. And so you could imagine him thinking, wow, 4 weeks ago, I was sure and she was sure and everything was great. We just got it. We've had a few bumpy patches, but we just got to get back to that. But I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. And then he sets off on the road to go snowboarding and stuff. And he is thinking, oh, I don't know. And then she does something that's hurtful or isn't particularly warm or whatever. There's some tension. And in the car, he's not really sure what to say or he's in a bad mood. So is she, whatever. They get out of the car and the cameras are there. And he's thinking, well, let's try to have a good time. And also, it would help me a little bit with the haters if I don't come across like a complete asshole. So I'll try to cheer myself up a little bit and try to put this message out there to the world that I'm a likable guy. Is that manipulation? Would you say that's psychopathic manipulation? You can make a call on that. So there's a lot of different versions of this. The other version is that he was just responding to her vibe, or he was in a bad mood, or he's not a morning person, or whatever. There's just a lot of possibilities. But the way she's bringing it up is, so we can use this as a jumping off point. So I'm sure you've all been there, where it's midway through the day, maybe even you're on a fun activity, and you're just kind of wondering what's going on with your spouse. And the key is, according to John Gottman and researchers and others, is how you open up the conversation. So usually there's a thought preamble, meaning that you are thinking about how to say it, thinking about if it's worth bringing up, that sort of thing. During that time, you want to brainstorm a number of different options about how you open it up. Typically, people will lock in on one thing, or they don't even really plan. They're just like, I'm going to talk to him about, and then they sit down and just blah, whatever comes out. So think about for yourself next time that happens. Maybe there's something right now that you want to turn to your partner sitting with you on the couch, pause this video, and maybe think about it, or reflect on the ways that you've opened it up in the past, or reflect on the ways that your partner opened it up to you, because it sets the tone. Now, if you open it up poorly, it doesn't mean that you're doomed, but it's a lot harder to pull back tension and hurt and fight or flight than it is to just not create it to begin with. So for her, she could have sat down and said, so I don't know what's happening, but when we were driving up here, you seemed distant. I don't know what that's about. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe you weren't distant, but it just felt that way. It felt hurtful. It wasn't a high amount of hurt, but I was just kind of hoping that we would have a little moment in the car, but it just seemed like there was tension. I don't know. And then we get here and the cameras are on and suddenly you're really nice. I'm not saying you're manipulative or anything. I'm just saying it makes me wonder if it's real. I hope it's real because I like it when we're like that, but I don't know. So what, did I do something this morning, or are you stuffing your feelings while we're here in front of the cameras because you just don't want to deal with it? What's going on? Okay. End of role play. It's addressing the same thing, right? But it doesn't have hostility. It doesn't have accusation. It doesn't have certainty, right? There's a lot of tentativeness. Now, if you asked me privately what I thought in this role play, this made up situation, and you asked me like, well, what do you really think? Well, I would probably have hostile things to say. I'd be like, well, I just know that d. You know, there's different versions of yourself, right? And so if you want to be constructive and if you're actually trying to make the relationship work, then there's a way to open up the conversation and there's a way not to. So we can learn from this. Let's rewatch. So with all that in mind, think about how she opened this conversation.
Honestly, I feel like it's so crazy when you sit there and then the car was still very dismissive. And then you get on the bike and cameras come out and you act like none of that shit happened, all cheesy. Oh, babe, come here, let's take a picture.
You can make your own call. Now, maybe for herself, she's like, I don't give a shit. This relationship is over. Or I don't mind risking it with saying how I want to say it. But what I'll hear from people is they'll say, I'm just saying how I feel. No, you're not saying how you feel. If you want to say how you feel, you want to talk about your emotions. And that's it. She could say how she feels, which is God knows, but I assume it's hurt and worry. Anxiety about how he feels or about the future, hurt about early this morning or just things that have happened up to this point, maybe some shame or something. And that's what she's feeling. But the interpretation that she is applying is a choice, is her interpretation. She is taking in data. He was being quiet in the car, it sounds like, and she was saying it was dismissive. Now, maybe he was literally dismissive, like she was being nice and turns to him and says, oh, how was your morning? And he's just like, oh, dismissive or whatever. It's possible, we don't know. But what people say is like, so Kirk, you're telling me to not say how I feel. You're telling me to be fake. No, I'm telling you to be careful about how you talk with your partner so that things actually can be resolved. Because if you open it, and the other way of saying it is like, and I have a whole merch line about this. I was going to say, maybe I had the coffee mug, but this is the jerk face. Don't be a jerk face one. But if being healthy is corny, then be corny. And I've had this conversation many times with people of all different subgroups. And they will, when I talk with them about this, and I really struggled with it for a while, talking with couples and individuals about this kind of stuff that I talk about, they'll say like, well, that doesn't really sound like me when I would role play it. And I'd say, okay, well, choose, make it into your words for sure. And they would have a hard time accessing it. And they'd say, I don't know, it just doesn't really feel like me. And I'm like, well, what does it feel like? And they'd say, well, it feels corny. And I'd say, well, if being healthy is being corny, then be corny. I mean, what are we on this planet for? To not be corny? Come on. So that's one thing. But the other thing that I'll say is that there's a lot of different versions of you, so to speak. There's a lot of different modes that you can be in. There's attack mode. There's tentative mode. There's I'm ashamed of myself mode. There's mature mode, in the same way that if your kids were to be a jerk face to you, you have a kindergarten kid who is like, I hate you, mommy, for not buying me that squishmallow or whatever. I mean, if you just responded the way you wanted to or the way that it felt in the moment, you'd be like, fuck you, kid. I can't afford that. Or you already have 15 squishmallows. What's the deal? But you don't say that, right? You rise above it and you think, what's the healthy response as a parent? I mean, maybe in other situations, like you're really stressed out, you just got diagnosed at the doctor with like a very scary thing. You come home and your 5-year-old kid wants a Squishmallow. Do you just dump on your 5-year-old and say like, look, I've been through a lot. I just got diagnosed with this and I need you. Like, you don't do that to your 5-year-old. Do you understand that? Now, we're not treating our partners like I'm just saying this is like, is it disingenuous? Is it fake to try to be a good parent? Well, it's the same when we're in a situation with our partners. Now, presumably we should be more honest, right? More ourselves. But, I'll just speak for myself that when I am in this situation with my wife, I have an impulse. If I just went from off the cuff, I would be destructive. I would say all the typical stupid shit. And I stop myself. And if I ask myself, well, is that what you want to say? I would say yes. And if I ask myself, does it seem justified for me to say it with that tone of voice? I would say absolutely. But I know from experience that I'm in a mode at that moment that is not seeing things rationally, or at least not in a flexible way. And so I know that the me of that time is actually not helpful. So another way of saying it is like, if it means corny or if it doesn't feel congruent with yourself or if you feel fake or something, well, so be it. Because you have learned from before and after those modes that you're in when you're hurt and angry and upset and triggered, from other times when you're more settled and more relaxed or more attachment secure, that moment, that you isn't actually the you. It's not the differentiated you that's at the center of you. It's a fighter. It's a fight or flight you. It's the policeman or the protector in the IFS language or something. That's a version of you, but it's not the you,
You're not the same person on camera. You're not. And that shit literally breaks me down because then every time we're about to do something fun, we get into it because of an asshole remark that you do. Then all of a sudden on camera, oh, babe, oh, baby, oh, baby.
If this is true, okay. But if it's an interpretation, my goodness, the same could be said about her. Why didn't you bring this up off camera? Why, so you're waiting to be on camera to talk about it as well? I mean, I don't know. If it's true and she's right, then I would say, why even be on a date with him? If you think this of him, then why are you even trying? What you clearly are saying is that he's a manipulative psychopath, that he is a horrible, horrible human being. That when he's being, and she's said, the thing is that gives me a little bit of hesitation to like take her narrative as objective, is that she has said things like this in previous yelling matches at him. Like we've seen it when they were at the bar and he was barely able to get a couple words out before she's just like, get out of my face, that kind of thing. And it's possible that, now, is it possible that when he's like, oh, baby, let's do this, that there's a part of him that is like hurt and angry and he is coming across with like a little bit of incongruence, you know what I mean? And that's real and detectable or something, and like, hey, that's not, you're being overly nice. I know what you really think. Okay, but if people are going to default to a mode, I would rather have them be nice because, imagine if she were nice back and they just, they can build on that maybe, unless you hate him or think that he's being completely fake and he's manipulative and, and maybe he is. I don't know. It just doesn't really matter to me. I mean, for the two of them, they can work this out, but there's a chance. Okay, there's a chance that what's happening right now is he's manipulative and he is a problem, the way that a lot of people on the internet seem to think he is. I can't know. I don't see evidence of that, but I'm just one person, so who knows? But there's another version of this story. If we look at Occam's razor, if we look at what's being presented, is that she gets very hurt and very angry because she's hurt. Like when he, in front of everyone at the cowboy party, says like, oh, you think he's, oh, I'd be nice if I heard that. Okay, it's totally normal for her to have been hurt by that. It's like, one, that's hurtful. Two, in front of everyone, to make me look like an asshole. that hurts. Well, but then she just really piled it on. She made a mountain out of a molehill. It was maybe not a molehill, but a hill, and she made a mountain out of it. Now, at first, she wasn't yelling, but she was inflexibly forcing him to talk about it. And he wasn't really responding that well. He could have easily said, I don't know, I guess it's just kind of hurtful sometimes, but I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. He would eventually say that, but anyway. So if we just look at the data and then the follow-up the next day, and now we have what could be considered to be verbal abuse, intimidation, not letting him talk, putting him down, criticism, control. I don't know if that's what's happening. I'm guessing there's a fair amount of people that like Calibria. I like Calibria. I've said this before, that of anyone on the show, I feel like I would probably have a lot to relate to with Calibria, maybe even be in my inner circle. There are clinicians in my inner circle. She's a clinician, or she works in social work. So, we tend to have a lot in common and can talk about things that we do at work, So it's not a matter of liking or disliking. It's a matter of looking at what we're seeing and using it as a jumping off point, which is that if your partner talks to you the way she's talking, it's something to identify. We'll see. So let's watch. If she stops and listens, depending on what he says, then it's just she's heated. And whether that's rational or not all of us are rational all the time, but she's allowing him to talk, then, it's a conversation. But that's not what happened before. He would apologize. It wasn't, I don't know, exactly what she wanted to hear, and she would jump down his throat, and then he would try to make, oh, I'm sorry, and it would just end that. Now, we saw an edit, so who knows, but let's watch.
Let's do this. Oh, babe, come on, la, la, la. And I'm sitting here standoffish because I don't hide my fucking emotions. I'm so sorry. I'm not a fake person. I will not do it. No, babe, how about we address the problem? Address the elephant in the room. We're sitting in the car. They let you know that your bachelor party theme is Western. You go, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Okay, so she's now talking about something that happened building up to the Western party or something. But she's doing it that mode again of mocking and ridicule. You're all doing this, and and I'm just not going to do it. Okay, fine. If he's being nice, whether it's real or not, you can't read his mind, or whether it's 100% real or 50% real or something, and you don't want to do it, then you don't have to do it, KB. If you don't want to reciprocate, if you're not in the mood, if you don't like him, then absolutely. But I think she has a bit of a complex around that. Maybe people have accused her of being that way in the past or something. And instead of just being like, I'm just not in the mood, I'm sorry, she has to accuse him of something, which people will do when they don't feel secure in what they did. It's like, instead of sitting down and saying, so earlier when you were trying to be nice to me, I wasn't in the mood. So when I say I'm not in the mood, just don't do that anymore. Okay, totally fine. But that's not what she leads with. You're fake. and then by the way, he's just listening, right? Either that's what he does all the time. But I also think he knows from experience that if he tries to say anything, she will say, don't interrupt you. Now, he did that too. So maybe this is the way the two of them talk. But like the last conversation, as soon as it was his turn to talk, she interrupted and shut him down. So, I don't know what's happening here, but a little tip for conversation, and I do this all the time in my office, that if possible, you want to break up your tirade into workable chunks, right? So far in the span of maybe 8 sentences, she has she's dropped like 3 different bombs. And if people have that style of communication, it can kind of work sometimes depending on how the couple works it out. But typically it's not helpful, particularly if there's this much tension. So if you're bringing it up, say, okay, you want to organize it. Okay, I want to have these 4 things. Let's start maybe with the easiest one or the most important one or something. And I'm going to try to be disciplined and not bring up these other 3. These 3 are important to me, but this is the real one I really want to get to if I'm really trying to resolve something. Because if I drop 10 bombs, as soon as the other person is allowed to talk, sometimes they'll go back to the first bomb because that's what they've been thinking about the whole time. And it'll seem like they didn't listen to the other 9 bombs, but it's an overwhelming amount of bombs.
First of all, you never even acknowledged I was talking. You was looking straight ahead. Then you cut me off while talking. And for you to sit there and tell me that that wasn't dismissive, that wasn't disrespectful, and you're not sorry about it, and you're not apologizing about it because you're not sorry about it, that sucks. How do I communicate with a person that act like that?
All right. So, I don't know. I almost think that, I don't know. At this point, I think there's a good chance that Calabria is a no. As a couple therapist, I will see this sometime. I don't know if this is what's happening because I can't read people's minds, but there are times where it seems like I, as an observer of a couple that comes in my office, will be performed to, especially in the beginning of treatment, the first 6 months or something, that people will be trying to get my approval, which, makes some sense because when you go to a professional, you're hoping you're not the crazy one or you're hoping your marriage isn't that bad or something, and that's normal. It's not helpful, and I'm not there to make those kinds of evaluations, of course, but it's understandable. I mean, I've been there as a client myself. And of course, these two people know that there are millions upon millions of people watching these conversations, potentially, right? So sometimes we just have to consider that. And what I'm not hearing is that she talked with them in the car. We're talking now. And I wonder if a factor in how much she's going for it in this conversation is because she knows she's a no, and she's worried that she's going to be the bad guy because she's sort of reviewing what's been on camera, and she's like, well, on camera, he's this really nice guy, and I was a little heated the other night or that morning after or something, and how do I get out ahead of the judgment that could be happening to me, which I'm sure is happening. From my understanding, it's really to both of them, which is just horrible. I swear to God, I've never appreciated internet mobs, of course. I've been podcasting for 17 years. I have been the target of internet mobs of various ilks since the beginning. I mean, we made an episode about Michael Jackson like 10 years ago, and we weren't even really saying anything. We were just talking about this documentary we watched, and I had no idea that there was an internet mob about Michael Jackson. Now, of course, it makes sense, but whatever. Anyway, so, it goes way back. And of course, since I call myself a feminist, the incel manosphere that mob has been coming after me probably for even a longer period of time. So, I'm familiar with internet mobs. It doesn't make it easier, but I'm just so tired of it. And I don't have an internet mob. Well, there's always a certain portion of people that are after me. Weirdly, it's like some people get fixated, and I don't know. Maybe they're justified. I guess I'm biased because I'm me. But anyway, for the cast, seeing it, and just maybe I'm just at a certain phase after 5.5 years of watching the show and watching reality TV that I guess I'm burnt out on the internet mob. Maybe that's the way of putting it. And anyone who's going after either one of these are two people that are trying to find love like anybody else. And we're seeing the worst bits of the footage. And we don't know what's really happening. But even if we imagine the range of possibilities that are likely, none of it is the sort of thing that these people should be attacked for or criticized for beyond the sort of criticism you'd give yourself, like, oh, I was kind of a jerk face to my partner last night. The kind of shit that people say about these people is like insane. People are insane. The certainty and the diagnosing from afar and it's like you're either team Edmund or you're team KB, and one person can do no right and the other person can do no wrong, and the diagnosing and accusations and the assumptions know no bounds. He's a manipulative gaslighter. She's an abusive, aggressive, horrible person, or I don't know. There's various different things people are saying. He's autistic, and it's just like, maybe, but any one of these cast members could be on the spectrum. You wouldn't know necessarily, right? And what is it about Edmund that makes people think that? I have no idea. He's different. Like people today, like anyone who exhibits anything that isn't just like your standard bullshit, toxic masculine presentation, you're instantly autistic or you're manipulative. I don't know. I'm just so tired of it, y'all. So now again, as I said a long time ago, I guess some people could say I'm a part of the thing. I don't know. I try not to be.
Like, I'm really trying, but you make it so hard. I can't force you to want to grow up. The guy I fell in love with in the pods, the guy I was talking to for the first couple days in Mexico, that's the guy I love.
And I've said this as well, that he has a youthful presentation, but that could be framed in a lot of different ways. There's another way to frame it, that he actually is the opposite of childish because he is mature enough to be okay with having regular emotions. Most of his emotions that he's displayed in the edit anyway has been jubilance and happiness and spontaneity, not worrying about what other people think the way that most people do, particularly men. So we don't know. Are there other childish? I haven't heard anything about him that has given me reason to think that he's childish or immature or not ready for marriage or something. Maybe not. I don't know. But the sort of things that I would see about him that would be childish or immature would be if he was too self-centered or something, the way that children will be, or that he doesn't fully understand what it means to commit or be engaged or something, and seems kind of naive to what that all means. And maybe he is, but I don't see any evidence of that any more so than anybody else. Or if he can't pay his bills, which again, there's no evidence of that at all. I would imagine we would have heard something if that were the case, right? Or he wanted her to dress him in the morning and feed him in the morning or something, and we're not hearing anything along those lines. So, now she would know him better than we would, and she's saying, "I'm waiting for you to grow up." I don't know, but there's a possibility that she I wonder what it is that she's wanting. I wonder what it is that she's wanting. I think, okay. So I think where things went wrong, obviously, okay, so he was childish and immature in bed that one time, which I'm sure a lot of you are screaming, maybe commenting already, and I'll stop you right there. That, yes, that was childish. That was literally immature. I give you so much, and he's crying, and he's like, you're not going to have sex with me. Now, I don't think it had to do with sex. That's what was on the surface, and that was a part of it. But I think it was a culmination of him wanting more affection. And I think that's just an incompatibility between the two of them, and she has been explicit about that. So I think he was hoping for more of that in the pods, hoping, he had a vision of post-pods that she would be that way, at least to some extent. She isn't that way. She has stated that. She knows that about herself. I wonder how much of that is a defense and how much of that is just her. But regardless, she knows that about herself, and she stated that earlier. I'm just not an affectionate person. She said that. And I think she's saying that by experience with other men that she's been with that have also been hurt by that. I don't know. And so she says that, and he, I think, wanted more of that. And when they had the conversation about sex and the other guys had sex and he hadn't, I think it just drove home this distance and lack of affection. Now, it could literally just be sex, and it could be that he's toxic male in that way, or putting too much emphasis on that, or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with putting emphasis on that, right? Anyway, but so in that moment, yes, he was immature, but he recovered pretty quickly. I don't know how he would. I don't know if he would take responsibility or if he would apologize. We haven't seen that. If he's like, "I'm sorry, I was I don't know what was going on there. We haven't seen that, so maybe that's a part of how he feels. And when he turned to her at the party and says like, oh, I wish you would say perfect, you could argue that was also not mature because he regretted it immediately. I could tell. He's like, oh, and he was trying to like, oh, everything's fine. Anyway, so you could say that's, I don't know if that's childish. I mean, I think everyone on the show will do stuff like that sometimes. Spontaneous, which is pro and con. Anyway, and for him, I think that was the rub. So we could just reduce the whole thing to that, honestly. I mean, it is reductive, but I think as I'm walking myself through the buildup, when things started to go wrong, I think it's just that he wants more spontaneous love, affection, compliments, love language, whatever you want to say. And she doesn't have that to give. And she knows that about herself and wants him to be okay with it, I think. But she knows that he's not. And that makes her feel bad. And so then she gets upset. And and you could argue maybe being a little manipulative, I guess, because in his niceness and reaching out, there's an expectation of reciprocation. Whether that's there or not, I don't know. I think that's maybe what she's detecting, and we could see that being true. And again, like I was saying earlier, what sort of manipulation is that? Is it like psychopathic manipulation? Or do all of us do that? When we reach out to our partner and we need a hug and a kiss, there's various different ways of asking for that. One of the ways is to go in with a hug and a kiss, hoping that the other person will hug and kiss you back, but you're not necessarily 100% just wanting to give unconditionally. You're just hoping to get something going around that so that you can get your needs met. And maybe she wants a hug and a kiss too. And I hope so, but I have if he's complimenting or trying to be nice, or, hey babe, he's trying to get something going, and he believes it, and he's being honest, but he's also trying to, prime the pump, and for her not to do that. Yeah, actually, the more I kind of talk about this, and instead of her in the moment just saying, we are just not compatible, he wants to give that, and I don't even really want it. I almost get that sense, like, I don't even really want that, especially if there are strings attached. And so I'm just like, but instead of just sitting with that, it's just like this being upset at him around that, it's all starting to kind of fit.
Where I do nothing wrong to you.
Okay.
And I'm sorry for you taking whatever I've done wrong to you. But here we are, snowmobiling. I'm in a good mood, looking over, like, enjoying this, and
you're in a good mood, sweetheart, but you just told me getting out the car. I'm not in a good mood. I'm not.
Okay. So I said that we're going to watch the style of communication. So she talked for a long time, and in my language, which is fine, but she is dropping a lot of accusations, which might all be true or understandable or something. And she arguably dropped like 10 different things. You're childish, you're fake, you're dismissive, you don't take accountability, you never apologize. Those are some pretty big bombs. Maybe they're accurate, but they're pretty big things. As soon as he opens his mouth and gets 2 sentences in, she's interrupting him. Now, maybe off camera, they have a way of doing this, but if I were there, I would be like, I would want to set some ground rules and say, how do you want to do this? Because there are 2 general ways of doing this, if we think of it as a spectrum. It's not inherently dysfunctional to have interruptions, so to speak, as long as everyone feels free to say, let me get this out, that kind of thing. Or, meaning that someone's about to chime in and you're like, oh, wait, let me just finish this thought. Because there's a pro to that in that people are allowed to address things as they occur so that 10 bombs don't get dropped without being discussed one at a time, sort of a thing. Like, no, that's that. Why? Gee, or they want to apologize, right away. Like you drop a bomb, and the other person is just like, "Yep, you're right on that one, and I'm sorry." They interrupt with an apology. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. But what isn't likely to work is if one person says, you will not interrupt me, God damn it, I'm going to drop 10 bombs, and then I will have a pause in my speech, and then if you start to talk, I'm going to interrupt you, you know? So I said this earlier, I don't think that either one of them are a yes at this point. But anyway, so his main point is like, I'm just in a good mood. And the way you're taking these things is, I didn't know you were taking it that way, is basically what he's saying.
I'm in a good mood right now because I know your feelings are everything, so it's messing up my feelings.
You knew I was feeling this way before we got on this snowmobile. You literally told me you don't want to talk to me getting out of the car. And then you got on the snowmobile acting like everything's all happy.
Now
Stop
you yelling.
thinking.
Now you yelling.
Because you do this thing where you act like you weren't there. You act like you're not in the same car as me.
Yeah, she's saying a lot of things, and maybe they're all true, but we've seen this in politics or pundits, political pundits, the notion that if you're the loudest person in the room and you just don't let anyone else talk, then apparently your narrative works on the voters. You know what I mean? So there's a chance that if he were to say a lot of things that we would say, oh, KB's right to say that. There's also a chance that if he were allowed to say things that we'd go, oh, maybe there's another side of the story. We won't necessarily ever find that out, because as soon as he starts, think about how long she talked, and he quietly listened, and he didn't seem to be dismissing her in his mind. It had that look to it, but as we know from the fight that they had, or the makeup conversation or whatever, the morning after the cowboy night, that he had that face of just like, and I thought as soon as she was done talking, he'd be like, I'm done, or whatever. But he didn't. He's immediately started apologizing. So I think he is able to have those bombs go off, and then he's okay, well, let's, I mean, he's not like a supreme communicator, but on this spectrum of functionality, he's, towards the end of healthiness about not being defensive and that sort of thing. I mean, not extremely. Anyway, because the typical thing that we will see is that he will say, okay, can I talk? Okay, well, you and you and you and you call me immature, you're immature. We can imagine that happening, right? It's not a good thing, but it would make sense if you're going to be attacked and you want to fight back or defend yourself. That's typically what will happen. We don't see that at all. So now I want to check in with y'all and say, if you like or dislike, I get the impression a lot of people hate Edmund and like KB, which is fine. Liking and disliking doesn't necessarily mean that we can't learn for ourselves from some things that are being displayed. From KB's statement here, what is on camera is not necessarily what's representative of what's happening off camera. So we don't even know what's going on with these two people. We can only go off of what we're seeing, and therefore we have to work with what we got, and so we're going to talk about that. Anyway, I actually want to go to, I asked my contact on the show specifically about this question. I asked her, do you know anything about Edmund off camera? On camera, he seems nice and accommodating, but KB seems to be saying off camera he's different. So I asked her about that, and let's see what she said. So what she said was, Edmund can be moody sometimes, but I don't think to the point of deserving the way KB reacts to him. Now, my contact in the show was just another human being that only saw snippets or was only there for snippets, and so, take it with a grain of salt. But I was curious because she would know more, and also she talks with other producers that are present anyway. So according to her, she's saying Edmund can be moody sometimes. So I think meaning us as viewers might not be seeing the full Edmund presentation, but I don't think to the point of deserving the way KB reacts to him. And then she goes on to say, in reference to this scene, that he was in a mood, maybe in a bad mood in the car ride, but at the same time was genuinely, seemingly trying to enjoy their date at the mountain. So was he fake? Is he being fake? Is he just trying to hold on? Is he in a bad mood at one point and in a good mood at another? Who knows? But her observations here, or her, are reflective of something that seemingly might have been actually happening, but her interpretation and the way she's talking about it is the part that we have choices in. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, truly, because you deserve it. You really, really do.